Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Thursday, October 17th. LA Galaxy getting ready for one final regular season game, 90 minutes of regular season soccer before they transition into the playoffs, and perhaps they're of two minds headed to Houston, obviously wanting to stay in first place. We all admit it would be a disappointment, but did the Galaxy have to manage the team as well as they get ready for this game? Plus, we're going to get you injury updates on Joseph Paintsil and Marco Reus. A lot to get to in just a short amount of time. We're glad to have him back as there was no Thursday show last week, so I'm sure he's well rested. It's Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira. Eric, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. I'm on limited minutes here, but I'm happy to, work out my groins and hold on, I got to be careful what I say here.
It's COG after dark
in the fold, and to talk LA Galaxy soccer, and not only for a decision day, but prepping for the playoffs.
Amazing!
What a time to be alive.
I know.
We did it, Josh.
Not 13th place. The LA Galaxy, not 13th place. A big rumble going on. Not really. It's a little tiny rumble that's happening. But the East Coast pundits so often get lost in their little East Coast sides of things. They're saying that Greg Vanney doesn't deserve to be in the Coach of the Year talk when you have a guy who's going back possibly to an MLS Cup, and then you have a guy who has Luis Suarez and Messi and Busquets, and yes, they manage some injuries and some of that. But Greg Vanney, who had a team in 13th place, and now could possibly be winning the West on the last day of the regular season, he doesn't deserve it. It's a bunch of babacock. That's what I say.
Wow, babacock. I didn't think Thursday night was a babacock night, but here we are.
It is 8:04 p.m. I don't what 10:04 p.m. Central Time for you there. How are you even still awake? I mean, I'm getting kind of old now.
I don't know. I have breaking news also.
Yeah.
Right now, this is actually the final show from this particular headquarters of COG Studios.
We're moving.
So I'm working on a move. So again, if I see bags under the eyes, I'm exhausted. I'm with you. So again, I'm on Central Time on top of everything else with the longer days as they're going and just all the fun that comes along with moving and all those things that goes there. So if I look worse for wear and not exactly caught up on the East Coast pundits, again, I did my research. I'm ready to go for tonight's show, but maybe I'm not totally aware of everything. I heard that, there was some Ricky controversy with playoff scheduling possibly being leaked and things like that.
How dare Ricky? How dare
times.
he make everything crazy? No, you're right. It's crazy times. I went to just in case you were very clear for everybody. I went to the pumpkin patch last night because it is that time of year, and
a little chill in the air, right?
See, here's the real thing. OC Fairground, right? They have a pumpkin patch there, which is great. You can do it. Here's the cool thing: Monday through Thursday, they don't charge the $12 for parking. You're already saving a fortune right there.
We're in the green already,
right?
Folks.
So I feel like that. So we went, and then my kid gets a little nervy sometimes about going on some of the big inflatables, like the big slides and stuff like that. So there was a Halloween miracle, really. What happened was we walked in, he saw one of his friends from school. We know the parents very well. They hooked up for 45 minutes, him and their two kids just gone and like tumbling down these things, and it was best $20 that my wife spent ever. I hadn't have to
Well
spend
done.
any money, so I was good.
Well done.
Yeah, so that was my big exciting night. Now here we are on a Thursday night, getting ready for soccer on a Saturday. A weird game too. This is weird. Yeah. Greg Vanney talked about it today, Eric, and I think I agree with him, but I'm also going to disagree with him on some other things tonight. So let's agree with him now, which is he's happy that they're playing for something. It means something, and it means something ahead of games that mean something too, right? It's like if this game didn't mean anything and it was the throwaway, perhaps the Galaxy's mindset of going into the playoffs isn't quite the same. But that being said, does that set you up for disappointment should the Galaxy fall to second place? And by the way, second place is no like giant emergency. It would be disappointing. I know everybody would talk about, Greg said it would be disappointing, right? That they've been there, they want to close it out, they want to do it. But he's talking out of two sides because he has to. He's saying, but we have to manage the game. We have to manage the players. Whoever's healthier is the guys who are going to play against Houston, that type of thing. This is not going to force. We're not making bad decisions on Saturday.
But that's also been Greg's MO all season long is obviously you want to win games, you want to go after it, but you need to limit minutes of certain players who are coming in and rotate the squad, coming back from injury. So he's been doing that even where they're going. But I think the best point is the situation they've been in with sitting in first for as long as they have been is they really, these last 5 games that they've been in, they have been playoff games since the El Trafico at Dignity Health Sports Park. That was a playoff game because it had implications that obviously here we are on decision day. People laughed at us and they said, aren't we getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves saying that this is deciding the 1 and 2 seed in MLS Cup Western Conference Finals? But look, we're here now. Look at us now. Who would have thought? And so the playoffs really started then. And to be in those high pressure situations is what you want. If they were sitting in 4th, 5th, do the games matter? Do they not matter? Kind of floundering around. But the fact that they need to hold on to or want to hold on to that first place spot, these have been playoff games. And now going into this final day, I think they have everything to play for, knowing that, if you leave things in the hands of the other game, it's at LAFC is playing a San Jose team who has, been eliminated for like 4 months now.
Right.
It feels like they're sitting at the bottom. You don't want to count on San Jose to bail you out and figure things out with the goal differential. At the time, I think 2 weeks ago when I was talking about it, I said, well, with the goal differential, the Galaxy, will take some miracles. But now, as these games have been made up, the goal differential is pretty thin.
Yeah, +2
so
right
I think
now. Yeah.
a misstep really puts the Galaxy in a bad situation. So there is everything to play for. You're going to manage. You're not going to ruin your season, your potential playoffs for it. But they want to go out there. They want to get a point. I think they know what's on the line, and they're going to go for it. And I think that brings us back to our East Coast pundit piece. You can argue the case for other coaches, but to say that Greg Vanney's not in the conversation, I didn't hear exactly what they're saying. He deserves to absolutely be in the conversation. Look at this run that he's setting them up right now.
Omitted by just not being there, right? Like it was like, oh, well, this is a race between Wilfred Nancy and Tata Martino. What kind of drugs are people on the East Coast? And, just maybe the Mississippi River is stopping too many of those. Maybe they should share with everybody. But
all the way across. Folks.
All the way, East Coast to West Coast. There should be some love in there. Greg Vanney, looking at look again, and I said this on Monday, facts don't care about your feelings, right? It's like, it's one of those things.
Here we are.
It does not matter what happens in this last game. Really, it doesn't. It puts a little different spin on it just because the stats would increase should they win the game, that type of thing. This is one of the best LA Galaxy teams to have ever played. You don't have to love it. All right, but just go back and look at the points. Look at what they're able to accomplish. Look at what they are doing in a league that is stronger than it has ever been with 29 teams. Just the straight fact, if you gave everybody an equal chance of winning an MLS Cup at 29 teams, it's harder to win than whenever there were 20 teams, right? It's like there's more teams competing. There's less chance for error. You look what the LA Galaxy are doing. Somebody, I was watching Twitter responses today when they were talking about, can the LA Galaxy close it out? Sasha Kleshin says yes, which may or may not be a good thing for Galaxy fans. By the way, Sasha's like the best guy. You guys, I know you guys don't, it's fun to not like him, but
it's good banter. It's good for banter. I think people who get it. And
I think Sasha gets it too, right?
Yeah.
He's sort of there. But he said, the Galaxy, after seeing what they were able to do against Colorado, I got them getting a point, getting a result in Houston, getting that draw. And he goes, because they proved to me that they can do what they can do on the road.
Correct.
By the way, that win in Colorado is a playoff type performance, right? And so as you pointed out, so purposefully there is the playoffs have already started. We talked to Edwin Cerrillo today. Edwin was sort of the same thing. I was like, hey, I go, how important is this game? I go, it feels like you guys have been constantly having to test themselves. He was laughing. He goes, this year is easier just because the results have been there. It's so much more fun. He goes, last year it felt like a preseason game every time before. He was like, the whole deal. Edwin's a great kid, by the way. Just so much fun watching him grow. And he's got just like this joyous smile whenever he talks, and the personality is there. It's just, he's a
That's why I
good
wanted
kid.
to call him the golden boy with the bleached blonde hair. I think there's something about him. I think I mentioned this 2 weeks ago too. The kids are saying it. Aura. He has the aura about him. There's something about Cerrillo that just the way he carries himself. I think the Galaxy are in good hands with him in that midfield.
Greg Vanney was talking about him and just how he simplifies the midfield and he gets the ball to where it needs to go. And he goes, and maybe that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. He goes, but that's what makes him the great player that I love to watch,
And you need guys like that on these teams. And I was thinking about that, you've talked, that's been a topic of discussion with you and the Panda, and we've talked about it, how this team is going to go down stats wise as one of the greatest Galaxy teams ever. And it's a crazy thing to say, because it's like, are they? And I think we're probably too close to it. But as I reflect on it and I'm looking at the stats and reviewing it, when you see the goal contributions that come from all the DPs, 2 players sitting on 15 goals, 13 goals, Joseph Paintsil on 10, the fact that you have 4 players in double digits, the first time ever that's been done, I think we're probably too close to it and still have a little bit of that PTSD that we're worried that the other shoe is going to drop. We're in game 34. I don't think we need to worry about the season going awry now. I think we can now look back at this and say, man, what a season from Gabriel Peck. Dejan Joveljic gave us what we needed. We wish the injury bug maybe didn't bite him and maybe that number could be even higher. But still, even with that, 15 goals, Joseph Paintsil has taken a little bit of a dip, but at the same time, 10 goals from a designated player.
And
Give
10
me that
assists.
all day long.
And 10 assists.
And
20
10
goal
assists, 20 goal contributions from your quote, third best designated player. That's not bad. That's exactly where you want to be sitting. And of course, Ricky, I think right now it doesn't feel like it because we're in it, but I think this is a team you're going to look at it, 2, 3, 5 years down the line and said, man, what a special team. And then you'll look back on guys where I started with, like Cerrillo, like Diego Fagundes, who maybe aren't going to show up on the stat sheet, but you say, wow, those players were such a big part of that team and why that team was special.
Yeah, you can sort of see some of that. But you go, and there was somebody who was saying, hey, the Galaxy are going to choke, right, in this last game because they've been so inconsistent this year. And I'm like, that's not true, though, right?
No, look at the form guide.
Look at the form guide. Look at the amount of losses that they have. Look at the fact that, if they're inconsistent, then holy geez, the rest of the league must really. There's only one team currently who has been quote unquote more consistent or gotten more points than the LA Galaxy, and that is this superstar Miami team that's in there. And by the way, I asked Greg Vanney today about looking at Columbus. I go, are you paying attention to Columbus too? Like, is that important? He goes, yeah. He goes, bottom line is we want to win the game. And so if we do that, we'll take care of all those things. He goes, it was interesting because I'll paraphrase here, but he was like, but again, we're not going to risk, we're not going to hurt ourselves. They're not going to put, and we'll get you an injury update here in just a second. We're not going to put Joseph Paintsil out there if we think we're going to risk him, and because we feel like we have to win this game. We are going to go into the playoffs healthy, and that's the important part for the LA Galaxy. That's sort of that theme that's been going. But for me, it's like you always saying, talking out both sides of your mouth. Yeah, this game's really important for us, but hey,
what it is, it's the safety net. You're heading into the trapeze. You're going to do, the triple flip and hang on to it. If you grab it, great. If not, guess what? Second place, you're still going to host playoff games, presumably until the Western Conference Final.
Yep.
If something happens and these single game knockouts, you're still can host a Western Conference Final. And worst case scenario, you're sleeping in your own bed that night and then just traveling across town. Again, you'd prefer to play it at home, but It's not like you have to fly to Colorado or fly to Salt Lake if push comes to shove and you do end up in that situation. It's not you're flying to Montreal. You're going across town playing your rivals, which doesn't that excite you? Don't you want to go and be that spoiler? So I think even with the worst doomsday scenario on decision day, they lose, the other guys win, you end up with that second seed. Is that the worst thing in the world? I don't know. I don't think that's terrible because with the home, having that as a home game, if again, we played these cards out, these scenarios. If you do get them and you get those other guys in your house in the Western Conference Final, there's a lot of weight that comes with that too. If you don't come through on that day, losing that game in your own house in the playoffs is rough. So maybe there's some benefit to playing the spoiler on the other side of it, going as the number 2 seed, quote unquote, with being disappointed and then being able to figure out. So I think there's some positive spin that you can shade this if it goes the other way. To talk out of both sides of your mouth, obviously you want to go for it, but you can throw it a lot of positive spins if you end up falling to number 2.
There's a lot more, it feels, leeway. Like you said, there's a lot more. Net. Yeah, there's something there. By the way, update on merch. Just got a text. Just wanted to throw it out. All Sworn shirts sold out online. Remember how they launched the online today? Remember wasn't that today? It was today. I think it was today.
It was this morning.
So,
I've been out of it, but I've been in touch more recently and finding out that it went live today, and then now I'm finding out it's sold out.
It's gone. Potential restock on the 28th, possibly. Don't know if that's 100%, but inventory is still available at the team store. So if you get to the team store, that's still there. So letting everybody know there. Let's the whole idea was saying the LA Galaxy are inconsistent. I think they've been actually very consistent despite our feelings. And again, there's some feelings involved in this season, right? Greg Vanney was asked about sort of looking back on last year and what he sort of said to the guys first day in training camp this year. And he was like, don't worry about last year. The amount of setbacks and craziness that happened that year has never happened to me and he said almost 28 years that he's been coaching and playing in the league. He goes, I've never seen anything like that. He goes, so that's not normal. So we know this year is going to be better because we're not going to have that. So throw that away, which I think is a really interesting perspective because certainly as fans, you're sort of locked into that and people get into the death spiral, right? You know, the whole idea. You know what a death spiral actually is? Do you know that's a real thing?
I mean, I've heard the term, and what's the actual?
It's an aviation. It's an aviation term. All right.
And okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So a death spiral is a lot of times it would happen whenever you have reduced visibility within the flying environment. So say there's clouds around, right? Well, we always know that if you're upright right now, Eric, you're being pressed down on by 1G, right? We know one times the force of gravity, right? And we know as you go in steeper turns, you put more G's on you, right? You can feel that force. Well, a death spiral is the ability to sort of point yourself down at the ground and be in this 1G turn, and that turn will just keep going around and around, and you'll just keep. You think you're flying
without
straight.
Increasing G's.
Yeah, because it's only 1G, right? You think you're in level flight, and if you're not paying attention to everything you have, that just goes round and around, and you would have no idea. You think you're in the clouds. You can't see if you're not paying attention, which there's plenty of instruments to tell you that things are not good right now. But if you go at 1G, that's what a death spiral is, and you go, and then you run into something, and you're like, how'd that happen? So that is what
you know, folks.
Yeah, I know.
You learn something new every day.
But no, looking at what this sort of the Galaxy were in that death spiral and everybody's sort of waiting for that to happen. There's a lot of feelings in that, and then you come into this year and it felt inconsistent. But again, the LA Galaxy didn't lose more than one game at a time. Never lost back-to-back games. The only other time that happened was in 2011, right? So we can sort of sit there and say that's pretty nuts to see that type of thing. I think 2014 as well was the other one.
And the narrative last year with Greg Vanney never putting three wins in a row. Now we have three 3-game win streaks, possibly 2 4-game win streaks.
Right.
So again, I could argue the inconsistency, if you're going to call it, is even within games. And I've said that the Galaxy putting together a full 90 minutes.
Right.
But they've saved themselves and bailed themselves out, and when they've dug themselves into holes in so many situations, that maybe that's part of the identity of the team. So you can call it inconsistent, but I don't think from game to game you can call it inconsistent when they haven't lost more than one game, in a row.
Greg Vanney deserves to be in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
1,000,000%. 100 emoji. I'll send that back to you there.
The LA Galaxy deserve to be in a position where their stars are considered for some of these big deals. And so let's watch how that plays out. Let's get you an injury update because there were 2 that we were watching. We'll give you 3, but one of them you're to be like, yeah, I probably already knew that. Julian Aude is the sort of the odd man, which is he's 100% healthy. He's fine. He's ready to go in. So they were Scott French was asking what situation you'd put him into and how you would sort of try to advance him and like all this other stuff. So it was an interesting little conversation. I expect that you go into some of these things. Looking at the other injuries, the one, we were watching Marco Reus. Marco Reus should be available, and Greg Vanney called him available to get appropriate minutes, was what it is. Appropriate minutes to me sounds come off the bench when the last 15, 20, 30 minutes.
I was going to say, we'll see you in the 71st minute,
yeah.
Marco.
Yeah, well, and also there's something to look at there, because without Mark Delgato, who's on suspension, who won't be playing, Greg thought, by the way, on that suspension, he goes, to me, that's more of a 50-50 call about whether or not you want to give him a red card. He goes, and then it would have to be like really above the bar in order for everybody to then retroactively go back and suspend him. And he goes, I didn't think that was there. Like, he goes, I still think it's a judgment call. He goes, and then you look at that on the other side and you look at Vieira, and Vieira didn't get any additional games. And he's like, whenever he clearly was spearing for Ricky Puig in that,
I'll play devil's advocate here, and that the Vieira tackle, obviously, with the intent there and the timing of the tackle, the game's over,
yes.
And 100% I'll give that a red card. With Delgato, I think had that been called a red card in the game, I don't know that I'd be too upset about it, because the ball wasn't played. He hacked him right in the transition of play
in a vertical sense.
But
and vertical to me is safer.
And also, it's a professional foul. He's doing it to break up the play. The intent was to bring the player down. I don't think the intent was there to injure, and I think that's the difference between the Vieira tackle and the Delgato tackle. But to Vanney's point about it being 50-50, if he got a red, I don't think I'd be too upset about it.
In the moment.
In the moment. But to your point, to look back at it and to rejudge it, to give it the same weight as the Vieira tackle, I don't think they're exactly equal in that regard.
Yeah, I can see that. So with Delgato out, you're most likely going to be relying on Brugman to play the majority of that game, and then you're probably going to need somebody to come in and relieve Brugman anyway, and so that's likely to be Marco Reus. So it does probably work out in that sense, and you're expecting Cerrillo to play 90 minutes, Ricky Puig to play 90 minutes, like that type of thing. So you're going to have to do that. You're a little thin in that midfield just without Delgato, and you would like for either Delgato to start that game or Delgato comes off the bench in that game. If you're trying to be more conservative, likely Delgato gets the start. To start that. And so that would be one of them. So Marco Reus available, expect him to get appropriate minutes, probably second half is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because we did see when they rolled out Reus starting with Ricky and with Brugman. Right. I think that was the Portland game. There were some struggles there, and there was a little bit of a difference when how they came out. But I think Reus is his magic that he's going to be able to bring to this team is going to be coming off the bench. So obviously there could be situations where they're going to need to start him either in the playoffs when you're doing the 3-game series in that first round. But I think where his magic is going to happen is going to be coming off the bench. So I think this gives them, again, in a playoff environment, to work those scenarios where you have to fight and you have to dig in with Cerrillo, with Ricky, and then bringing in, Reus off the bench. That's going to kind of give you an idea on how this is going to play out.
Yeah, it feels that way. The other update, which is a big one. This is the big update that everybody's waiting for, the status of Joseph Paintsil. And basically, Greg Vanney characterized it as a low or very low grade strain, right? So that's basically what it is. We believe that's of the hamstring, although Greg didn't say specifically, but we believe that's of the hamstring. He said that he's been involved in training all week, that he's been training, he's looked good. His last step is to be able to sort of turn it up to full speed and feel comfortable and not have any problems. Should he pass that test tomorrow, so recording on Thursday, Friday, the LA Galaxy train in the AM, fly in the PM, right? If they passes that test in the AM, then he could be available for selection come Saturday. That being said, you're parking him. I have a feeling he doesn't see the field. If he may make the bench, but I don't know that he sees the field. And so that's the good news is that it seems like he's going to be okay whenever the playoffs start, right?
Yeah.
So that's most important.
What I heard through all that is he was participating in training, because what's the death spiral or the sign that things are not good? Yeah. Training off to the side, receiving treatment. The fact that he's part of training and it's just a matter of turning that volume knob up and getting him to go. Obviously, you don't want to risk it, but to me, it's a good sign that he's participating, because if he was receiving treatment or not out there, that's when I would begin to worry about his injury status. But again, if you really emphasize the fact that it's a low grade strain, then come playoff time, it seems like he's going to be ready to go and have a factor there.
It's going to be like Varsity Blues. He's going to be Wendell. Don't stick that needle, Wendell.
Give me the good stuff, coach.
Papa, by the way, $2 super chat. Happy birthday to Scott. Scott, happy birthday. Very
Shout
happy
out
birthday.
to Scott. Happy birthday and all the chat. Showing him some love. Shout out to you, Scott.
It's awesome. And then John out in the mountain time zone, $5 super chat for aviation lessons super chat. John is a certified flight instructor, so I always get checked by John, so I'm glad that I'm doing okay.
That was a targeted shot at John. You knew your audience. You knew John was going to chime in once he heard that aviation hot talk there.
I was ready to go on that one. So those are the updates there. Really interesting sort of talk just from Greg Vanney. And again, it sort of centers along the same stuff. He talked a little bit about the Houston game and he said, hey, he goes, I expect, he goes, in a perfect world, it's like 50-50 in terms of possession. He goes, maybe even them a little more than us. He goes, because I just feel like they're going to be at home. They're going to want to try to do this. He goes, if we can get out in front, then they're going to want the ball even more. He goes, and I think, that sort of gives us a chance to be dynamic. Both of these teams can be dynamic. Both of these teams play a very similar style. So this is the clash. The Galaxy beat Houston earlier this year 2-1. They are both possession-based teams that like to get out on the transition. Ben Olsen, I will say everything. I've told you funny stories about Ben Olsen in the past about how the dude had a gallery in D.C. and Greg Berhalter went to go visit it, and Greg wanted to talk soccer, and Ben was like, "No, man, we're here talking art, like in the gallery."
For my art, bro.
Yeah, we're here for the art. And Ben Olsen's sort of like one of those old school guys, right? He reminds me so much of DC United at every turn and everything that's going on, right? I
was going to say he's MLS, royalty flashback. When you think of early MLS days, Ben Olsen is on the peachy folder when you're describing those, the late 90s, early 2000s MLS superstars.
Yeah. So anyway, Ben Olsen, he may not, and I think this is probably unfair to him. He may not get all the credit whenever it comes to tactics and everything else, but his guys just play. And he's done such a good job with Houston. They're a fun team to watch. They're a fun team to sort of go out there and play. They produce a lot of chances along with the LA Galaxy. They produce a lot of chances. So it's going to be a very much as a clash of the same style. So sometimes it's like, you go against up an Austin team, which is a lot more transition, right? And you're like, it's a possession team versus no, I like it whenever the styles like sort of collide and what happens with that. And so they were very focused on that. And Greg was talking about how, they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of speed. Mm-hmm. They have all these things that can sort of come in there. And he was talking about Hector Herrera again. I haven't heard, he hasn't been playing, but they are expecting him to be back for the playoffs. I don't know if that means that he will be back for this game on Saturday, but he's a key to them and what they could do in the playoffs. I could see a Houston team getting hot in the playoffs and causing a lot of problems.
Yeah, so they have those players in there, Coco Carrasquilla. I don't know if we're getting into the full game preview.
Why not? You know what? There's not that much to talk about, really. When have we been talking about this game for 2 weeks now?
And the other one is Ezekiel Pon is another, their new designated player summer signing. So he wasn't in the equation the last time the Galaxy played him. Right. And he is someone who can be a really dangerous player when he goes on the field, seeing what he can do and the money that they spend on him and the investment. When we talk about old school MLS not going the same route that maybe the Galaxy went, where they had their team front loaded and weren't really banking on the summer signings. I say that with Marco Reus being on the team. Right. But Houston did bring in a big name DP in the summer and to hopefully boost them to go on a deep playoff run. And so I think we're going to talk about some of the familiar names, the Latif Blessings, the, Steve Clarks, the Coco Carrasquillas, but I think one of those new contenders with Ezekiel Pon, I think that's one of those players is going to be one to watch.
So they have speed, they have quickness. Mm-hmm. They're also susceptible, much like the LA Galaxy, on the counter, right? So it's like one of those things is like, watch this game go end to end at one point. It's going to go end to end at one point. I'm here for it. It's going to be
decision day, end to end, flying.
There's really not
points in the balance.
There's really not that much intrigue in the whole decision day this year. Like overall, for Galaxy fans, there's intrigue, yes. Right? But overall, in all, I mean, there's like
it's really seeding.
The Western Conference has no teams in it that won't. Everybody knows who's in the playoffs and who's out of the playoffs. That's done. We just don't know what the seeding is, and so it's like, okay, that's fun. You can go ahead and look at that, but it's not as much fun as who will fight to get in, right? And so on the Eastern side of things, I think they still have two teams left to sort of be decided. So a little more interesting whenever it comes down to it. You have Miami possibly trying to play for the points record, which would be 74, which I think is it one more than New England Revolutions had 73 under Bruce Arena not too long ago. It was not that long ago. It was LAFC set it at like 71, and then New England the next year set it at 73, and now Miami's looking, I think, to set it at 74.
And didn't Toronto set it in the 2018, 20?
So
I think it was pretty close. We've been setting points records for the last 5 years. 5 out of the last 6 years of teams, I feel like, have gone for it. So I don't know how to read that or what that means, but it's just an interesting little tidbit.
Robinson, $5 super chat. The Galaxy should go for the win because not only will they win the Western, but also be second in the league, only behind Messi and Inter Miami, which then puts them, and we'll bring up the standings in the Eastern Conference so everybody can pay attention to it, which then puts them ahead of the Columbus Crew. And that Columbus Crew, that's sort of the one. That's what I asked Greg Vanney about today. Mm-hmm. Are you paying attention to that at all? Is that even a thing? Bottom line, take care of business, win, and then you will stay ahead of Columbus. That's certainly how it goes, right? And so, but there's also a part that says you get to MLS Cup any way that you can get to MLS Cup.
Yeah,
right.
It would be Columbus, at Miami. If they make it there, that's something. Yeah,
it's interesting though. Certainly, whenever you go in the modern era of MLS Cups, the LA Galaxy won all of their MLS Cups at home. Right, those last three were all at home. I'm trying to remember because they were doing MLS Cup in different places.
Well, they had one in Foxborough, but it was a neutral location in New England. Right. Just happened to make it there.
And quite honestly, 2011 was the last time that they picked an MLS Cup venue to host, and then the LA Galaxy ended up getting there as it was a quote unquote neutral venue.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if everybody knows this behind the scenes, but whenever MLS Cup actually comes, it's not run by the teams, right? It's run by the league. So it gets real weird real fast because, you're like, for 2012 and 2014, MLS is in charge of like the locker rooms. MLS is in charge of the post game. MLS is in charge of the seating charts and all this stuff. And it's like, no, wait a minute. I want my normal spot. Where's my, this is me.
It's not how this works.
Yeah. It's like, Josh is going to sit out on the, out on one of the roofs. And that's where I watched, I think 2012 and 2014 was on the roof of the press boxes out there, but it changes and it gets weird whenever that happens. So, even if you are the host team, MLS takes over that part of it, and then they're in charge of a lot of ticketing and all those other things that sort of happen as well.
Yeah, those media spots become golden there. You got to really, shake some hands. Did we want to go into the math scenarios? If you want to pull up the standings, kind of break down what it all means.
Talk to me.
So basically anything less than a point for the Galaxy, and you're allowing San Jose to dictate our spot and our location. So the only way that the Galaxy can walk away with this, if they happen to lose, worst case scenario, the Galaxy lose, then they're going to have at least a -1. They'll have to, if they lose, you lose by at least a goal. So worst case scenario, you lose, but let's say you only lose by a goal, and then LAFC win. If they win, they have to win by 1 goal. So they're going to be +1. So with the Galaxy sitting at a 20 goal differential, -1, that puts them at 19. With LAFC at 18, with a +1 puts them at 19. So then they're tied on goal differential. So then you go to goals for, and then the Galaxy are in. The wrench that throws into that is LAFC wins 2-0, the Galaxy lose by 2 goals, then you're out. And it essentially goes, you're out of that, goal differential situation. So really anything less than a point and you're getting into some really shaky territory. Again, decision day, weird things can happen. Maybe San Jose decides to just go wild and totally play spoiler and goes the other direction and does us a favor, even if they do lose. But I think really what you're needing is a point out of this. Anything else, the seeding just, it affects that, but I think you really are looking for a point, and that'll get you out of there. With the Columbus of it all, with the win, I think, it was Robinson who mentioned it. A win, 3 points, clears Columbus no matter what.
Right.
If they get 1 point, that's going to obviously set them up to be the number 1 seed in the West. But then they let the New York Red Bulls dictate what happens based on their result with Columbus.
Which is a good matchup for the Galaxy, though.
Yes.
Like, that's not that New York and Columbus. They're playing for seeding. Something's going on. That's a bigger deal than just nothing. I'll also say this before I ruin, unless you have any other scenarios you want to go over.
No, that was it.
Okay.
I had we talked about our scenario. You basically need a point or a 1 +1 -1, or you need, to clear Columbus, you need a win, or you need the Red Bulls who are going to take it over.
Super chat from Aaron, $5 super chat. I am a certified COG podcast word corrector. That is absolutely correct.
These are the facts.
A Dachshund Wrangler, which makes him a Wiener Wrangler. Okay, that's good.
Again, moving on.
All right, good. Robinson, $5 super chat. I hope Messi's Inter Miami doesn't make it to the final. I hope the Galaxy make it to the final and host it. Still angry Messi didn't come to play for Galaxy. All I will say is this. was it 2012, where the only way the Galaxy could host MLS Cup was if Houston was on the other side, and then Houston was on the other side, and that thing ended up getting played, right? So I think that was the one. I think 2011 was Houston, 2012 was Houston, and then 2014 was New England. So whenever that happened, right, that was again, weird
a lot
things
can
happen.
change. It doesn't always go chalk. I mean, we can look into the data and figure it out. I don't think it's gone top seed, second seed in the finals. I don't think it's gone that way at all for the last 4 years. You've had those top teams make their way through, but there's been a lot of, upsets and kind of shakeups along the way. So I'm with you. I kind of feel like Miami is going to find a way there by, the power of Don Garber, whatever he can do, the dark arts to make that happen and make it a thing. But a lot of things can change.
Garber
in the playoffs.
wants a Miami LA matchup, whether that's LAFC or LA Galaxy.
I'll put on my tinfoil hat. I know people like to say that the other guys get a lot of love from the media. I don't think it matters. I think any of the LA teams, the league would be happy with making it against the Golden Boy. I think the narrative with Beckham and the connection, there was a reason why that game opened. Opened the season with Messi's first full season, with Miami playing against the Galaxy. So I think if anything, if you want to put your tinfoil hat in, there's probably a nudge in the favor of the Galaxy there.
We can go look at the result. Here's where I get a little sideways, Eric. And it's just, if you're looking at what is the best matchup for the LA Galaxy, right? I don't think, as in terms of, let's say the LA, obviously winning the Western Conference is big, right? And puts you into that first, and then you have to play the wild card game. And that's awesome that the wild card will then have to come to you, because if we look at the schedule real quick, we know the wild card matches are going to be Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the best of three series for the Galaxy probably wouldn't start until Saturday, because really I think they're trying to make Friday Miami Day. So if it's Miami Day, then that's how it goes. And I think Saturday, Sunday. Now, Ricky Puig had a story on his Instagram where he had circled basically it said MLS playoffs, and it said the 26th or 27th, which is a Sunday. He could have also had the 25th that also said MLS Cup playoffs. So there's nothing definitive in that. But I wouldn't be surprised, and you and I were talking about it beforehand, if you look at the wild card, and the wild card would play, because it's the later game in the Western Conference, perhaps they're going to play them on Wednesday instead of the Tuesday game, which there's 3 hours difference basically between the Eastern Conference and that Western Conference start. So it's a little more time. You give it to the Western Conference. You say the Western Conference, you guys are going to play on Wednesday, and the Eastern Conference, you guys are going to play on Tuesday, and that'll be the wild card playing games. And that means that the Eastern Conference wild card will play on Saturday, and the Western Conference wild card will play on Sunday. That's some great reasoning if you want to make it that way. Here's the wrench, and I think I talked about it on Monday, is there's scheduling for all of these venues. And so you don't know what other conflicts there are. Maybe Sunday is the day that the LA Galaxy are going to play, regardless of whether they're first or second. It may not be seeding dependent. So don't put that in there. But
we got to figure out when Wango Tango is. That's what we got to work the playoffs around.
My wife, I said this on Monday. My wife is going to a concert at BMO Stadium in November, and I'm like, that's a playoff game date. How are they doing that? It would be the third game of 3 on that weekend, and so that means there is a concert at that venue on that Saturday night. It's a Saturday night, so LAFC ain't playing on a Saturday night.
And notoriously, when they have concerts there, it really does tear up the field and put it in a bad situation. So, fingers crossed that continues to throw a wrench in their plans.
So anyway, that's sort of the plan. So we see that in there. But if we go back on where the LA Galaxy could possibly face right now, if they're in first, the wild card game would be hosted by Vancouver Whitecaps against the Portland Timbers as it stands right now. That can change, but that's how it is. 8 is Vancouver, 9 is Portland. Then the LA Galaxy would have a 3-game best of 3 series against either Vancouver or Portland. I don't like either of those matchups. I don't like Vancouver matchup, although I think that they can be handled by the LA Galaxy, especially at home.
Especially 2 out of 3, yes.
I don't love Portland because
I hate it.
It's Evander. Right. Yeah. And I really think Portland's going to, if Portland is in that wild card game and doing that, I think Portland's the one that comes out of that. But if I don't think you want to play Portland. I don't. And I just don't think the Galaxy match up well against them. So
Yeah, I think they can. They have the capability. They've shown they can beat Portland.
Yes,
but I think it is a much tougher game. After what Vancouver, how they let me down, we could have been sitting pretty in first place already. So I'm not going to put any trust in Vancouver to handle things and make life easy on us. After their letdown in the 90 plus minutes and not being able, Brian White finds a way to score against us and handle his business, but for whatever reason can't get it done. When we needed you most, Vancouver, you let us down.
Right, hits the upright like twice, and you're like, really, that almost happened, huh? All right, cool. So that's the thing. So in the way I'm seeing it, at least first round matchup wise, it's not horrible to get into that second spot and possibly play against Minnesota. That being said, it puts you on the same side as Seattle, and it puts you on the same side as Colorado. And
a 3-game series where you need to travel at least once, Minnesota is a worse travel option.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is, but it is also real grass. Now, whether or not that field is usually crap, so that's a problem. So
and the weather.
And the weather could be the weather could be bad, right? So there's lots of things. At least you're going to play in a dome if you're going to Vancouver, or you will play in Portland, which again could be a weather thing, and you're playing on turf for either of those as well. So listen, I don't think there's anything great about the first round matchups either way for the LA Galaxy right now. Having said that, I think the first side, if it puts you on the same bracket side as Real Salt Lake right now in Houston, and I like the Galaxy's chances against Real Salt Lake in one game at home. I like the Galaxy's chances against one game at home against Houston. I think those are really good. I would look at them being strong against Colorado. I feel like that's a good one. Seattle's an unknown because the Galaxy played them a while ago, and it just doesn't feel like they know what they currently are,
That's one of those, it doesn't matter what the rosters say. It's just a matchup that, for whatever reason, is never easy for the Galaxy. Vancouver, in a game when they were never great in the standings, they always seemed to cause problems when they came to Dignity Health Sports Park. So it's just something about certain teams, that when that matchup happens mentally, whether you believe it or not, there's something there. Seattle has a lot of those places.
But is this the year you throw all that stuff out? Like the Houston Mojo. Are you worried about going to Houston? You shouldn't be, right? Like the Galaxy have proven again and again that they're ready to break down barriers of things being tough, and it's been tough all year. I asked Edwin Surya, I said, it's been tough all year for you guys. You haven't had an easy path. Yes, it's easier because you guys are winning, and that makes it feel like it's easier, but it feels like around every corner they've had to prove themselves, and quite honestly, prove it to the media, prove it to the fans, prove it to everybody that you're even worthy of being discussed in these same as like a good team in the Western Conference. How long did we all sit there and say, I don't know about this team in the Western? Like, I don't know.
We're still saying it in game 33.
No, we're not.
We're waiting for the next
good team.
Again, I'm not saying it, but I'm saying people, the collective, the royal we.
Okay.
I'm saying, but that goes back to my bizarro LA Galaxy. This is the year where everything is just completely sideways. Going into a decision day against a Texas team, what can possibly go wrong? And we've seen it go wrong all those different ways. Where I see, look at this, when they go to play these, at Austin with a morning game, at FC Dallas where it's 926 degrees and they just look dead and out of it. Here, looking at what the weather is going to be like on Sunday in Houston, we're going to be sitting in the 70s. It's going to be good weather. This is not going to be ugly Texas heat.
They're not going to be used to it. Houston's not going to be used to it. They won't know what to do.
Houston's going to be out of their element. Yeah, the Galaxy are going to be sitting pretty in their 70s. So there's just something about this being the bizarro LA Galaxy year in the best way possible.
Jeff, by the way, $5 super chat. If you were to create a 2025 calendar of the all-time hunks of the LA Galaxy, past and present, who would be in it? Number one, a former co-host of mine, Jared Dubois, would be absolutely on. He would be.
We're going off.
Yeah, I'm going off.
Well
I don't. No, don't give them what they want. I can tell you the physiques and the people who have just been in really good shape. I mean, there's some people in there. I mean, Zlatan would be on there. Just the in shape that he was. Are you kidding? Nigel de Jong would be on there, 100%. Who else you got?
You're missing the easy one. 1A for me is Alan Gordon. Put a cleat on it, and we're in good shape here.
You're there. I would say another person who doesn't like to wear a lot of clothes. Omar Gonzalez could be on there.
There you go.
A guy who's currently on the roster but is hurt, and again, I don't know that we'll see him the rest of this year. Cáceres is a guy who
he makes people feel things.
He makes lots of people feel things.
Yellow Van Dam is another one. This is one of those where you get the male gaze versus the female gaze.
Right.
Looking at Yellow Van Dam, I don't know that I'd point anything out, but when you talk to women, they're like, that guy, yeah, for sure.
Oh,
so
the
there's
stories.
something about
the stories.
So there's something there, yeah.
If you see me and you want a Yellow Von Dom story, just come up and ask me. I will tell you all about the Yellow Von Dom stories. This is COG after dark on OnlyFans.
Fun time. Hey, see you guys at the Circle for Yellow Van Dam story time.
If people don't know what that is and they just tuned in, that's the scary thing. Jeff, $5 super chat continues on. Of course, Beckham. Of course, how do we forget Golden Balls himself?
It's almost too obvious.
It is. Juan Pablo Angel. Dan Kennedy, Chris Pontius, Ponty Nom Nom.
Sneakies. Yes, that's a sneaky pick, but correct.
Robbie Rogers, 100% in there. Sebastian Lletget. No, we don't talk about Sebastian Lletget anymore. All right.
But again, not wrong. Again, you went with the safe, easy picks. They're not. None of those are incorrect.
Alessandrini or Josh's man crush, Todd Donovan. Todd Donovan will always have a special place in my heart, and he knows it. No, it would be an interesting calendar. I'm here for it. Well, I'm ready for it. Whenever you guys, do you want the 2025 hunks of the podcasters? Like, does that, because I could take the shirt off
to anybody. Yeah. So it's a thin roster when it comes to that regard.
So you get back into this, and the bottom line here is, as we've been talking now for two weeks basically about this Houston game, is that it goes so many different ways. I think you're going to get a pretty healthy LA Galaxy team. Now you're getting a Houston team that's also coming off a 3-0 loss to St. Louis. You're getting a Houston team that is playing at home. They're trying to sort of rebound. Kalen Carr, I think, was the commentator on the St. Louis game, and he was like, man, these guys need to like have a rebound show before the playoffs. That way they can sort of see where they're at.
Yeah.
And that's important to them, right? And if same would be for the LA Galaxy. You're coming off a loss, and the playoffs are right there. You're like, you need to show something. So
and I think from the Houston perspective, they're playing the number 1 seed in the playoffs. So, hey, if we want to know where we stand going into these playoffs, going into with the momentum, hey, we just beat the number 1 team in the West, that's going to make you feel good about where you're standing in the playoffs. And so I think that's going to be the chip that's on the shoulder of the Houston Dynamo. And you could put that same coin on the other side with the Galaxy. Hey, this is a playoff team. There could be, looking at if the playoffs started today, where they land, the Dynamo could be a team that you see in the next round or somewhere down the road. So let's not take this game lightly. Let's scout our opponent and let's show that we can beat them, because then the mentality comes into it where, okay, we beat these guys 2 weeks ago, so now we have that mental edge going into it, and it just gives you that little extra confidence that you need. So I think both teams can look at this with that perspective. Hey, we're playing a playoff team. This is going to tell us where we stand as we go into this final tournament.
Look at Houston, 1 point above Colorado, 2 points above Minnesota. So again, some seeding changes could definitely happen here. Bottom line is the Galaxy could almost end up playing Houston again, like really quick, right? It'd be one of those. So seeing them at the end of the year is going to be important for that. I think you're going to see a pretty standard LA Galaxy lineup. I'm not anticipating a whole bunch of things. I think you're going to get John McCarthy in goal. I think that on the right-hand side, you're going to get Miki Amane. I think Garces is going to start in this game. And hearing Greg Vanney talk about Garces today was really interesting too. He says, he's so aggressive, and there's pluses and minuses to that, but a lot of times that's good. He's so physically there and uses his physicality. He was sort of comparing him and Jalen Neal, which is Jalen Neal needs to learn how to use some of that physicality sometimes, because he's very analytical, where I'm going to make sure I'm in the right place, and maybe not so. And Garces is like physicality first, and then we'll figure out the rest of it. And it's sort of, if you mix the two, you'd have a really good player, right?
It's more that adventurous kind of swashbuckling style. I think it complements Maya Yoshida well. When you have Neal and Yoshida, you have two calming presences, but there's something about having a little bit of more of a wild card. And to no fault of Jalen Neal, but he seems to have lost that starting spot. But I think you were mentioning it on the last show. You never know when you're going to need him to step up, or you're going to need to close out those games. So I don't think he should hang his head in any way. But we were clamoring for so long. Where's Garces? Is he going to come in and play in some of these minutes? And then when he came in, he seemed to have solidified his starting spot at just the right time in these last few games heading into the playoffs. He seems like he's going to be the first choice center back to go along Yoshida.
Vanney talked about Yamane and Yoshida and being on the either side of Garces. That way they have that experience. And Greg was talking about the balance he has with the young players versus the guys who are, the seniors, the more senior players, the veterans on the team. And he goes, I think I have a really good mix of that right now. And he goes, and you've seen the younger players, sort of get better. look across the entire team. Most players have gotten better. Even if they're bench players that have come on, they've gotten better on this team as this team comes up. Vanney says, he goes, whenever I have one-on-one talks, I thought this was telling. He says, when I have one-on-one talks with guys as we're walking off the field or in my office or stuff like that, he goes, the belief they have in each other is off the charts. He goes, they feel that them together on that field, and it doesn't matter whether it's a bench guy, a starting guy, or anything like this, and credit to Greg Vanney for creating that type of atmosphere, but he says, that those guys feel like they can get things done. It doesn't matter who they're playing against. It doesn't matter which team it is in MLS, that they can win the game. Growing that belief over the season, being able to foster that kind of environment where, and we've seen it, what happens when Miguel Berry's out there and he scores a goal? He hasn't scored a ton of goals, but what happens? He gets mobbed by teammates.
They
right?
love him. They love him. Miguel Berry. There's something about Vibes FC and making it happen. And it goes back to the Vanney point of making that happen. You mentioned something about Ben Olsen also for not necessarily being known for his tactics. I don't know if I'm going to show my hand too much. There's not tons of Pep Guardiolas out there who are going to change the way the game is played on the world stage. I think once players get to a certain level, it becomes much less about tactics and much more about, can you motivate players and put players in the right situations, shape their mentality, get that chemistry right, more even in the, Will Kuntz side of it, putting the chemistry together, which pieces are going to fit together. I think it's much more of that than a lot of the X's and O's. When you get to it, again, talent is going to win out when you have the right mix of players complement each other. Right. That's going to win out more than, he put these guys in this formation and that set them up for success more than anything. That exists, absolutely. But I think that at this level, you need more Ben Olsen's, Greg Vanney's, who are going to be able to shape the minds of these players more than the physicality, because these are professional athletes. They should, on paper, be able to handle the job of going out there and playing the game. So
we have Yamane, you have Garces, you have Yoshida. I think you're going to get a Nelson at least to start. I think that the Galaxy are looking to be a little more conservative to start against Houston, and Aude can come in. Now, it's funny because he was talking about Aude, and he goes, now whenever we bring in Aude, we want him actually to be more conservative with what he's doing. We don't attack as much up the left-hand side that we need to.
We're a different team, Mr. Julian Aude.
That's right. It is the whole thing. So we need you to be a little more conservative, which is fine, because having the ability to do that and staying back is also one of those things that teams still have to respect. He still could go forward. He could still go. You better watch it. And I'm sure he'll pick his times when he does. But John Nelson has done such a great job in that. So with Delgato,
another guy who's essentially solidified his starting role.
Just craziness in terms of everybody's like, oh, John Nelson. Okay, whatever. Julian Aude is going to play, and you're like, John Nelson, that's a kid who goes like somewhere else next year because he's that good and somebody wants him and they like want to trade for him. And they're like, look, this kid deserves to be a starter, right? Like you see him. Yeah. Maybe it's about the system he plays with the Galaxy and everybody around him. That's how these things sort of progress. Let's get into the midfield. Ricky Puig starts. Big surprise. I think it's Gaston Brugman, as we talked about with Delgato suspension. I think Edwin Surreal plays. So you get those guys into the midfield. And then I think you're going to get a Fagundes on the left-hand side. I think you're going to get a Peck on the right-hand side. And I think you're going to get Dan Jovalic up top. So it's going to look pretty good. I just think Joseph Paintsil on the bench. The bench is a little thinner in that midfield than I think maybe you'd want it to be, but again, last game of the regular season, you're not trying to. Greg Vanney is not going to put this team in a position to hurt itself, right? Like you're not going to put somebody out there who doesn't need it. Marco Royce can come off the bench, those types of things.
And with that being said, this is a team that's capable of getting points. When you have Ricky Puig out there, when you have Dejan Jovalic out there, you have Diego Fagundes with how he played whenever his number gets called upon. This is not, we're sending out the white flag. Again, more Miguel Berry slander. Oh, we got a Miguel Berry start. I don't know how many points we're going to get out of this. This is a team that's capable of getting points. And I think that's the positive sign that you take out of the depth that this Galaxy team has had this season.
What do we have? Let's get, again, just an update. 6 p.m. Your kickoff time is 6:15 p.m. All right, so 15-minute lead-in. All games in the Western Conference start at 6 p.m. Pacific time. They will all go at the same time. Everything kicks off, and away you go. We will, of course, be watching, as we're watching this game on Saturday, you'll be watching the LAFC San Jose game. You will have already known what the result of that Columbus New York Red Bulls game is, so because those start 3 hours ahead of time at 3 p.m. Pacific time. All right, so it's a good day to sort of park in front of it and then turn up MLS Season Pass and go to the MLS 360 and watch all those games at the same time whenever they're being played in the Eastern Conference, and then come over and sort of narrow in on the LA Galaxy's game, which you can also watch on your phone and look at the scores of the other games. So we will be watching that.
Yeah, this is and that's the interesting thing about the MLS TV deal is if you're a neutral, this is what MLS 360 was made for, is for this situation to bounce around and to pop in. We have a goal here. The standings have changed. This is, what that's designed for. But I think the people who have the MLS TV package are diehards, and they're going to want to watch their team depending on where that plays out. That being said, I do expect them to have cut-ins and updates even if you're watching your home team, if we're watching the Galaxy. I'm sure as scores change with San Jose versus LAFC, that those updates are going to pop up on the screen. The live standings are going to change and impact it. So I imagine Apple's going to be on top of it with knowing where you're at. And I don't think you'll need to flip around too much on the channels.
Shouldn't. Do you have some D ratings here so that way we can get the what Vegas says? I
do have D ratings. So again, the Galaxy are sitting at a 30.4% chance for a win. Houston Dynamo with a 42.7% chance to win. So 12% higher chance for the Dynamo to win, which means there's a 26.8% chance for a draw. So not great. And when you look at D ratings, most of the season they've been favoring the LA Galaxy, even on the road when they're going against these quote unquote lesser opponents. But for this game, they seem to be favoring the Houston Dynamo. When we're talking about the money line, if you want the Galaxy right now, the best line is at plus 225. Houston is at plus 110. So again, that tells you where you want to go. If you feel like the Galaxy are going to walk away with 3 points, then there's money to be made there. But if you really want to make your money, a draw is at plus 290. So again, not a financial advisor, but I feel like that's where I'd want to put my ducats, is on a draw. I feel like the Galaxy know that at 1 point is going to be enough to put them in a good situation. And I think that's, if they have that draw, they're going to do whatever they can to, put their defensive lineups, park the bus, do what they need to do as more time goes along. So I imagine that the Galaxy are kind of setting themselves up, for a draw. Plus 290, that seems kind of tasty.
I mean, here's the thing, and this is how I see this playing out, is the LA Galaxy need to get on the board first. It's going to be easier in this game, and it's easier in every game, is if you're on the board first. But here's the thing, is we know that you can't go into the last 10 minutes of this game with a tie game. Right. Yeah. That's you're asking for problems. So it is up to the LA Galaxy to make sure that they work real hard in that first 25, 30, 35 minutes to get on the board. If you watch St. Louis, they were able to unravel Houston because of the fact that they were on the board early, and then Houston came in. Berkey had some great saves and stuff like that. And then Franco Escobar, who will not be playing in this game for Houston because he got 2 yellow cards and a red card in that game against St. Louis. He won't be there, so that's a left back. Well, who plays on the right side for the LA Galaxy? None other than Gabriel Peck. So you're telling me that there's going to be a second string guy going up against Gabriel Peck? That's where you're going to be trying.
Pray for Daniel Stairs if he gets put in that situation. They're going to slide him over.
I mean,
I like Daniel too much to do that to him.
Dan might put him in his pocket. Just wait. You never know. This is almost playoff time. Weird things happen in playoff times whenever it comes to defense. The amount of goals you score in the playoffs goes down. Usually. The teams, it's good for the Galaxy they score so many goals because they're going to have less opponents. Of them. Yes, you're going to play better opponents. There's going to be more defensive side, especially whenever you get into those one-off games. There's going to be a real sort of sense of not exposing yourself so that way you don't get behind. And so there's a little more tentative play. So watch what happens whenever the LA Galaxy go against Houston, because I think there's going to be some of that to start. But if the Galaxy get ahead, that's where they can... Realistically, the Galaxy get you were joking whenever we were texting back and forth. You're like 4-2 game, and I'm like, that's fine.
I didn't say who.
I know.
I just said 4-2.
That's fine as long as the Galaxy score 4 goals in the first half. So that way the game is over. Right? Just put it to bed. This is a game. Mark my words, that will not be put to bed. Right? Yeah. This will be one that'll go down. You're going to be standing up. You won't be able to sit down.
You're not going to be relaxed on this one.
This is not 90 minutes of it's going to be 45 minutes starting with about, 25 minutes of hyperventilation, right? In between, and then another 45 minutes, and you're probably going to need a shower afterwards.
And as you see other results trickle in, that's going to impact how you're feeling and how important that point is going to be towards the end.
The roller coaster.
I'm going to use some Guesman judo here. I'm going to use your own weight against you when you were, saying the people saying this team is inconsistent and, they actually haven't been. And I think when you're saying, do you want to go into those final 10 minutes tied because, things can go haywire? But the Galaxy have proven when they're in that situation and they need to grind it out, this 2024 LA Galaxy team has shown that they can grind it out when they need to. This is not a team that is letting in tons of late goals and having the heartbreak and the disappointment. So I wouldn't feel terrible if this were going into the 80th minute and it's tied 1-1 or tied 2-2 and they need to lock it down. I feel like defensively they're going to be able to man up and put themselves in the right situations based on what they do in 2024. I think they can handle it.
Vancouver tried to handle things whenever there's
Vancouver. Come on, Vancouver.
Don't trust Canadians. That's really the
blame
moral
Canada.
of the story.
I've heard.
That's what I've heard too. Predictions guaranteed to be wrong then, sir.
Well, I kind of tip my cap that I like the draw. I do think there's going to be more goals to it because the Galaxy just has a knack for scoring goals. I think I see a 2-2 draw. They get the point on the road. They do their job. They do what they're supposed to be doing to hold on. They don't leave their fate in anyone else's hands. So I think they get the point, and I think we see a 2-2 draw.
I think the last time the Galaxy drew a game was like forever ago. Like they have had like 0 draws since like May or something like that. It's been a very long time. I remember looking at some things. You go look while I'm paying attention.
I'm looking.
It's been a while since there's been a draw there, sir. Even in the form guide, you can sort of look at it. When was the last one?
0-0 in Charlotte. That was that was no school year. That was May, March.
Wow.
That was May before the Houston, before Dallas. So it had to be end of April, beginning of May.
There you go. See, that's the last time the LA Galaxy got a
long
draw.
time.
So here's what I'm saying: the score of this game is 2-1. I don't know which side of it falls on, but it's 2-1.
Josh, commit.
Right? It's a 3-goal. It's a if you're over under on goals, it's 3 goals. I mean, it's they said it. They're going to set it at 3 because it's going to be at 3. I could see it going to 4. I like your 2-2. I don't hate it. It's just this is such a hard one. By the way, this is a game you don't bet on. I'm just telling you right now.
Also fair,
right?
Yeah.
You don't, because there's too many factors. You don't know how much. Greg Vanney said it. They're not going to put this team in a position to hurt itself in terms of players positioning. So if you need to go for a goal and you're like, well, normally Joseph Paintsil will come on if he's coming off the bench. He's not coming off the bench. He's just going to stay there. And it's going to be Miguel Berry. He's coming out. And by the way, maybe he'll get a goal, right? He could.
The victory cigar, Miguel Berry.
It could very well be, right? The whole deal. But that's sort of what I see. I will say that I feel like the LA Galaxy are in the habit of exercising demons this year. They're in the habit of going places that they don't love to win. And by the way, they won last time in 2022. It hasn't been that long since they won in Houston. The 2-1 win earlier this year shows that they're capable of beating Houston. I think Houston with Ponce and some of the others, and whether Herrera makes a cameo could really affect things as well. So again, another reason not to bet on this game. You don't know who's going to play. You don't know where it's going. But I think if you're in that mood, I think 2-1. I think it's 2-1 for the Galaxy, and I think they can pull it off. And I would like it to be realistically, for this to be an easy game, it's 2-0 in like the 60th minute. And then that game, then it'll be squeaky for a little bit, and
once
Houston's going to score.
Back,
they're going to get one back, but that's how I see it playing. So I think it's 2-1 LA Galaxy for the thing. So there we go. All right, good.
I think 3 points is definitely, they're capable of getting 3 points.
Yeah,
I'm not. There's the doom and gloom out there and feeling like, that we're going to slip on the banana peel and Charlie Brown's going to, miss the ball. But this team has shown that they are absolutely capable of getting the full 3 points and really putting it out of reach for first place and above Columbus.
The LA Galaxy facing off against the Houston Dynamo in Houston. I think temperature at game time is right around 74, 75 degrees.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a high of 80, and then around that time is when the high will start to drop. So it'll be in the 70s around game time.
So 6 p.m. Is your TV start time on MLS Season Pass. Kickoff is 6:15. All the Western Conference games go at 6:15. All of the Eastern Conference games will go at 3:15. So you can pay attention to all those games. Watch them all. We'll be on Twitter to sort of walk you through some of those things. Let's get to a last super chat from executive producer Herb. Always great. $29 super chat. Thank you, Herb. Always appreciate you. Last super chat of the regular season. Hey, Hammer, nice gear. Hi, Josh. Just want to congratulate you on the level of professionalism of your show. Sound, video, lights, all top notch. Appreciate all your hard and constant work. Thanks, Herb. I certainly appreciate you. We always enjoy meeting you, seeing you, and the super chats are always awesome. So thanks, Herb. Certainly. Great.
regular season finale from Herb there to close us out.
I will say this, if you are in the Orange County area, down near Costa Mesa, it is a public run weekend at the train club. It is our Halloween public run weekend, so free train rides from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., both on Saturday and Sunday. So come out, check on by. I do expect it to be busy, but come on by, say hi, give me a high five, wait for, tell them that you're not getting on anybody's train but Josh's train.
I need Josh's train. I got my pumpkin spice. I'm ready for spooky season, a little train ride.
It's supposed to be
it doesn't get much better.
It's supposed to be warm this weekend. That's the only problem. Like it's gonna be like 75 on Saturday, and then it's supposed to be like 78 on Sunday. What's up with just make it be? It's been cold. I had to wear a sweatshirt. So
yeah, what the heck? Yeah, I'm in a jacket today. What's happening with this weather?
It's craziness. All right, anything else from you, sir?
No, I think we're good.
All right, then let's get on out of here. Eric, tell people where they can find you.
All right, as always, you can find me on everything at HammerEV9. That's on Twitter, X, Instagram, all the fun things at HammerEV and the number 9.
If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, at JGuesman, at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com. Head on over to Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple, iTunes, all those places. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Corner of the Galaxy. Tell your friends. And, of course, we are getting ready for the postseason edition when we come back on Monday night. Ooh, can't wait. LA Galaxy headed to Houston this Saturday. 1 point gets them the Western Conference. Let's see if they can clinch it. See if they can finish top of the West after being 13th last year. All right, for Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.